trình phát thanh dành cho đồng bào Việt Nam ở xa Tổ quốc.
Bờ biên giới anh đi về.
Chương trình phát thanh cho đồng bào Việt Nam. Chương trình dành cho đồng bào Việt Nam ở xa.
Welcome to the Hot Potcast, where Vietnam laughs with the world. I'm your host, Nghĩa, Mai. How do you run a comedy club, let alone a successful one? In this episode, the co-founder of the award-winning Monkey Barrel Comedy Club in Edinburgh, Scotland, Ben Verth, is going to share with us the trials and tribulations of running a Monkey Barrel, as well as the campaign to survive in the midst of a global pandemic. All the while, we also learn about the experience of our panelist Tu doing English comedy in Vietnam and speculate the possibility of a modern Vietnamese comedy club in the not-so-distant future. Let's go bananas.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Hot Podcast. I am your host, Nghĩa, Mai. First of all, I would like to introduce to our panel. Returning to us this week is the Mistress of Seduction, Minh Tu from Saigon. And also making his Hot Pot debut is wannabe Aussie, Derek Nguyen.
I feel so Asian right now.
Clapping for yourself.
And also joining us is our special guest for this week. He's a stand-up comedian from Edinburgh, Scotland, but he's now based in Dublin. He's written for several shows, including Scott's Squad, the Karen Dunbar Show, and he's also the co-founder of the award-winning Monkey Barrel Comedy, also in Edinburgh. Please welcome Ben Verth.
Thank you very much for having me. Cheers. This, as I said before we started, this is the most cosmopolitan bill that I've ever been on. So thanks for giving me this global reach. I hopefully will use the platform well.
Yeah, thank you. We're exceeding our quota for Whitey.
Oh, God.
Fine with it.
That's great. So we're just gonna catch up on a few things. So how are you guys doing?
So
Good
far,
thing.
so good.
Mostly breathing. Quality of air is not guaranteed, but, breathing.
Yeah. So for every episode, we have this little rule, is that, if any of you, throughout this recording made a pun, you have to mute yourself for 1 minute.
No pun intended? No, nothing? Okay, cool.
No, nothing.
That's kind of a cool punishment.
No, but it's live. But anyway, so we're gonna move to our first segment. We're gonna have an idiot's guide to the Monkey Barrel club that Ben co-founded. So Ben, can you just give us because you obviously know this quite well.
Monkey Barrel is a comedy club. I was one of the guys that set it up in Edinburgh. Had like so many comedy places, like everywhere. I'm like so many, like all of the comedy places everywhere. We've had to close down. And I think we're in a better position than a lot of other places, because we set up a crowdfund, and, we're quite a small enterprise anyway, but this is a video that we put up to kind of advertise, to explain why we were setting up a crowdfunder. And this is Ian Campbell making an impassioned plea. And when he gets out his phone there, he's reading, the insurance company letter that we got back. The insurance company trying to argue with us that the pandemic was not the reason that Monkey Barrel had to close. And they could find no evidence, no correlation between us having to close and a global disease running roughshod across the planet. So this is Ian making an impassioned plea to, if people like to support Monkey Barrel, send us some money. That would be perfect. So, I mean, I don't know what it was like in other countries, but there's certain public allegations made. When lockdowns first begun, it was asked of the public not to go near pubs and restaurants.
Yeah.
Which means that as a result, a lot of places, because the public was forbade going into them, would have to close under their own volition, as opposed to the government actually asking places to close down. Because in the first instance, if people just stayed away and you were forced to close, then there was no insurance claim. It wasn't anything mandated by the government asking you to do that and therefore interrupting your business. It was simply a change in societal structure and meant your business was unviable. So you were getting, pardon my expression, fuck off. So that's what the insurance company were trying to argue, is because Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, went on TV and suggested people don't go out and that places should probably think about closing. That meant legally he was jumping through little hoops to mean that insurance companies didn't have to pay out. Because if they did have to pay out, there would be zero insurance companies left because of the sheer volume of money that they'd have to put back into society. So this was them saying, look, you can technically, if you want, still be open, but you just can't run any shows or have any performers on stage.
Yeah.
But if people want to come in and wander around your building, turn it into a museum then. How about that? You know, this thing about re-fucking skilling. They're essentially suggesting, why don't you put up portraits of comedians for people to come in, walk around, and then leave after they've looked. Unfortunately, all the pieces are so big, you can just see them from the window on the street anyway. You don't have to come in. So.
I mean, comedians are essentially just human beings with mental health issues, so just turn it into a mental health clinic.
Oh yeah, we could. So we opened it as a kind of cafe bar. You know, there's not a lot of uptake from the general public, but all the comedians descended on the place, and it became like a comedian's coffee and booze watering hole. And so it eventually became that. It just became a lot of people. Because I was talking about this earlier today on another podcast. Is that there's not just when comics are not allowed to go on stage. There's not just a kind of interruption of income and an interruption of job.
Yeah.
There's an emotional toll to it. There's a bunch of people whose very identity is wrapped up with standing in front of a crowd and the crowd judging their ideas. Is that doesn't go away. Those neuroses, which often come out as jokes or Facebook posts, they need to be shared. So when we opened as a cafe, just comedians descended on the place.
Yeah. And
it just became crash for anxiety.
But obviously it was in the midst of that campaign to save live comedy that was happening basically across the UK and a bit in Ireland, with the hashtag save live comedy.
Yes. And that didn't work.
Yeah, I guess, I understand the difficulty with funding, getting funding from government for stand-up comedy in general, particularly in the UK.
Yeah, I can kind of see their point. They're giving money to things like opera, theatre, because those are kind of national or international ideas. It's a team of people producing stuff that you could say it's a worthwhile commentary on society. Whilst a lot of comedy is very individualistic, is very lowbrow, but it's also mass appeal. Yeah. So whereas theatres, if there wasn't a pandemic, still might need a lot of funding. A lot of times comedy doesn't. It's big business. I think a lot of the underlying argument with why they don't class comedy as an art form, didn't want to give any funding to comedy, is because they were like, well, you should have saved when you were doing really well, you idiots, you should have saved. And that isn't how comics work. Comics never think about tomorrow. So there.
I mean, I guess most of us don't even think that there is tomorrow. So yeah, I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but we did all right. We did okay. We had the crowdfunder, and then there was like an epic live Monkey Barrel fundraising show.
All right.
That was on the internet, and so we got the money that we needed to stay open. Now, what does that mean? We're going to need more money at some point.
I think that's all we just need to focus on just being alive.
You were not convinced by that at all, were you? Like in your head, you were like, I could focus on being alive. Do I want that? Am I into this?
We are turning quite philosophical. But just briefly, can you tell us how did you come up with the idea for the Monkey Barrel?
So I used to run a couple of comedy nights at a pub called the Beehive Inn on Grassmarket in Edinburgh. And one by one, everybody who made up the Monkey Barrel team eventually showed up. I was starting to run the nights, and then people like John Miller, David Blease, Chris Griffin, the host that we have for pretty much every Friday, Saturday night show since we started, Rick Molland. Ian, that you can see here, was one of the guys who was an act as well. And we would all hang out, and it was essentially John Miller had the idea of going. Now, I've always wanted to open a comedy club, but never had the money. And it was John that went, well, actually, this is how you can get the money, and this is how we should do it, and this is what we should do. What about it, everybody? And I think we all just went, yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's do that. And yeah, so it was just, it's actually pretty simple. Like, once you know how to run a comedy show, all you need is a couple of lights and a room. And that's what we got. And but, I mean, there's probably more to it because everyone had their own little department.
Yeah, definitely.
So I imagine somebody like Chris, who had to learn how to be a license holder of booze, I bet he was probably put through the ringer because Scottish license, the sale of alcohol in Scotland is bizarrely heavy and labyrinthine, despite the Scots having this reputation for being hardened drinkers.
Really?
So it's more remarkable that we are hardened drinkers, considering that there's just so many rules you have to take into account.
God,
when getting your first.
Probably just like, oh, we're jumping a lot of hoops here. Let's go wild, boys.
Nah, it's incredibly strict. It's incredibly, and even with that strictness, it's still got the highest level of alcoholism in the world.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, nobody's listening.
Yeah, I think it's the same with Ireland. Especially the whole reputation for Irish also being drunk as well.
Ireland have got a better. I think they've got a more positive attitude to it, because I remember when Ireland began closing down before Scotland or Britain in general, and I remember that in the weekend leading up to it, there was a lot of people who were deliberately advocating staying away from the pub. Do this for your fellow Dublin person, stay away from the pub. And loads of people did. And it was great. There was a real positive coming together of people. Whilst in Scotland, everyone went, fuck other people, I'm going to the pub. And if anything, people who hadn't been to the pub in years deliberately went to the pub. That's the difference between Scotland and Ireland.
All right,
cho đồng bào Việt Nam. Chương trình dành cho đồng bào Việt Nam.
But I mean, we mentioned, so you mentioned a bit about how to run a comedy club. I think we're going to get back to that a bit later. So we're going to have a special presentation from Du. He's going to talk to us about...
I don't really have a presentation, man, but okay. I just, what I want to share is just that being a comedian, local comedian in English-speaking comedy scene in Vietnam, I have a few things just to share, especially for people who haven't been to Vietnam to know about the situation over here. Is that funny because just now I talked to Nghĩa and I told him that English comedy club here feel like colonial country club.
Jeez.
Because if you're a local and you walk inside there, it was 80% Caucasian, 10% black people, which somehow make up about 90% of the volume for some reason, I don't know. And then 5% of Singaporean and Malaysian.
Oh,
that's all right.
I don't count them as real Asian because they always have English name. And then, sorry. And then
no, that's look. Derek is not my real name. Derek is not my real name. Derek is my white people name. So I could work in a Caucasian environment as Caucasian.
It's good for employability. Yeah.
That's true. It's true.
You did pick the whitest guy name.
Oh yeah, dude.
Derek.
My first flight to Melbourne 3.5 years ago, right? I was sitting aisle seat right next to this guy, and it was an 8-hour flight from Bangkok to Melbourne. I sat there and I talked to this guy maybe like a couple of hours, like of the last couple of hours of the flight. The last thing he told me was, "So what's your name?" Because I never got your name, and I'm like, "Derek," and he's like, "But you're Asian," and I'm like, "Okay, here we go." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm Asian. I know. Also, my name's Derek. Good to meet you. Never see you again." So yeah, I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, I mean, if I was speaking to you on the phone, I would just be very surprised.
Thank you.
I mean, like, imagine like, "Hi, how are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, mate, no, Roy's here. Yeah, I'm
Mike, yeah.
I'm walking to you like, why is the server here? I was expecting Derek.
You don't look Derek, man. You don't. You know?
I find it funny because when Vietnamese speak English, we always sound somehow more gangster, more gang ho.
I guess because we watch a lot of Hollywood movies.
Yeah. And then when we speak Vietnamese,
we like rap,
it's like so soft and like really play into the stereotype of us. But like when we can get to speak English, be like, hey, no, I'm a strong, independent woman looking for a relationship and a husband.
Gotta be submissive with the local boys, eh?
Yeah. Gotta leave, man. Reality is very different from the stuff that you talk on stage, which is the next point, because when you're working in as a comedian, a local comedian in the English speaking comedy scene over here, the identity game, which is what helped you to I would say it's like a special thing that you can play into, especially when your language skill is not that good. Yeah, like me, like my English is not really good. So my stage is that I have to play into my what you call that, like a stereotype, the kind of identity people think that I should adopt is that, and then I happen to look kind of okay on stage, so I have to, like put on makeup, act like a very submissive sort of person on stage. And then I can never, it's kind of funny because then I develop a new persona for my stage material. Like I exist as two people at the same time. One is a very, open-minded Asian, and one is like my real self, which is a otaku superhero.
I know that word.
Hawaii.
But then I can never bring this sort of identity on stage, because if I tell it to people on stage, the audience can just never make it out what it really is, because in their head, that sort of identity is less known. So it's very difficult to have relatable material. If you're living like a totally local life over here. And that's why when I get better in comedy over here is also, I realize that I start to adopt a kind of lifestyle that is very foreign compared to what I'm supposed to live as the local Vietnamese.
Yeah, so, because it reminds me of a story involving a gig that you and I did back years ago. So you remember, so we used to do this show where, that one of those shows in Asia where they brought they would bring like a big act from UK and they do like a big headline show, and then you obviously you get all the local acts to support them. So Saigon International Comedy, I think we did. So we did one. So me and Du did one, and it was quite. So when Du was doing his set, so in that show, I invited like a couple of friends of mine to watch it. And obviously, and the thing is that we were all part of the same group chat, right? So when Du went up to do her set, so I was just sitting at the back and I was checking my phone. I could see on the group chat that my friends were shitting on Du.
Oh.
And it was like, they were saying something along the line of like, oh my God, this is a Vietnamese woman. She's talking about fucking white guys. This is outrageous, unacceptable.
So was it like roasting, like bully, like mate roasting, or is it like full on just shame?
No, they were very serious. They're serious.
Wow.
Wow. Oh my God. I feel kind of bad though, because I shit on Asian. Be like, oh, Asian have small dick and everything like that.
I'm walking out here. Goddamn.
But I haven't told them. And like with my Asian vagina, what kind of dick can I handle, right? So let's be real.
Hold on, just check it. Yeah,
it's just. My
future wife is not seeing this, and that is it. Okay.
But karma is real. Karma is real because like most of my white boyfriends, majority of them have erectile dysfunction. So I don't know. That's what I get for bullshitting on my Asian friend's penis.
Well, it's I guess it goes both ways for males and females, because like most of my white girlfriends, they have the ability to think critically.
I mean, they speak their mind, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, this is that statement just narrowed my dating pool down to like.
It's amazing that we started off a conversation about, which was a great point. The idea of cultural colonialism has meant that so many artists cannot be their authentic self. And then we've reduced it down to how big or small some dicks are. That's a classic comedy conversation, right? Yeah, taking a really weighty subject and just went, how do you stick a dick in it? Like,
Who am I?
this is a very safe space. This is some career-ending shit right here.
I mean,
nobody's working at the moment. We're all cancelled technically. What
we are pretty much like
who's got a career?
Oh man!
Especially there are 3 Asians on this panel. It's gone. We're done. We're never to look at our parents once again. I've never.
I can't never look at my penis again.
Oh man, you hold your penis on such high regards, man. Good man.
Yeah, I know. That's the only good thing I have. Anyway, I think it's difficult.
Sorry, I've just got an image of you like at the end of this recording. And you just look down and you give it a stroke and go, at least you're still here, old friend.
Don't quit on me.
I'd be sad if you were gone.
Or dysfunction. Or misfire.
Yeah, miss. Oh my god.
Okay, dick jokes aside.
But anyway, I think...
Dick jokes aside.
I think that's a pun. Oh, sure. Anyway, Ben, I think you made a good point because you like doing gigs in Ireland, and I invite some friends over to my show. And one time someone of them said to me, you do the stuff you do is just talk about being Asian, and I'm like, no, I mean obviously if you actually listen between the lines, you have to listen to the context of the joke. I never say anything about being Asian. I talk about different stuff. I cover different topics. And obviously a lot of them are funny. They're well thought out. But, it's not just, but yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes you feel that people tend to reduce you to a stereotype,
Yeah, I mean, they're attempting to try and pin to you the blame for their own shortcomings. It is not anywhere in the league that you guys have spoken about just now. But being Scottish, sometimes all you need in an English comedy club is just to have a Scottish voice, and then all people, it doesn't matter what you're saying, in people's heads, it'll just be shortbread, lager, alcohol, shortbread, heroin, train spotting, Scotland, rah, 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 Loch Ness Monster. That's all they'll hear.
Independence.
Yes, there's all that. That's, and yeah, it's because people make us, I mean, comedy is the only art form where something is instantly judged. Everything else, people will wait until the end to go, was there a good resolution? Did I feel something? The moment a comic needn't even bother with material. They just need to stand on stage for maybe 30 seconds and people will have made the decision where they're going to go with that guy or woman or not. And a lot of it is down to lowest common denominator.
Yeah, I think even like the Irish people, even the Irish comics, they would say the same thing when they do shows at the Edinburgh Fringe, or they go to gigs in the rest of the UK, and obviously they would market it as Irish comedy. Even though there's no such thing as Irish comedy, but they would market it as Irish comedy simply because they think they will be more well suited to maybe talk to the audience without being condescending, and they're known for the crack.
Or there's a market for, because a lot of these shows, these kind of like packaged Irish, best of Irish, are filled with Americans who feel like they're making connection with going home to the old country. And it's like living vicariously. Like there's a
Boston.
There's a thing on, so there's a Irish comedy tour film, like a tour stand-up comedy thing, on Amazon Prime. And it's
Right.
like following these 4 comics as they do Irish comedy, round about a St. Patrick's Day weekend across America.
Oh, yeah.
All 4 of them are American. They're all going, hey, well, welcome. Yeah. So how's everybody enjoying St. Patty's Day? And there is not, you've Googled some Irish songs and you've played them as you walk on stage.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about what it's like to get deli meat downtown Boston. Like that's, that's the show.
You've watched a little bit too much of Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah, we get it. You watched Brooklyn, the film. You liked it. You're now Irish. Okay, cool.
Now you start talking a little bit like a pirate, but whatever.
With 2 legs.
Me too. It does bring up like a potential idea for like a Vietnamese comedy tour in America. We just gonna call it the VC tour. VC, Vietnamese comedians.
Oh shit! Jesus Christ.
No, it's not a good idea.
I was just like, so which side are we gonna go on? And then it's VC, and I'm like, okay.
It's gonna be great. Blockbuster.
Gonna be so great.
Well, I guess culturally there's no better time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks so much thanks so much to Tu for sharing her experiences. So I think we're gonna move on to our main topic. And obviously, Ben, you're well suited, your experience in this department. So Ben, how do one set up a comedy club?
Well, if any of you guys run night, just gigging.
Just gigging.
Tu, did you?
I run a storytelling night, not really a comedy.
I mean, I've had the chance to call people up and buzz people off when the 5-minute marks hit. Just play people off, just like real loud, just da da da, and people are like, let me finish the joke, but no.
It reminds me of Top Banana.
There's a line.
That is actually such a cracking idea. Like, if you can get a new material night, just ring somebody up and then just do it when they pick up, just hit them with the act. Because there's going to be at least 2 minutes before they go, what the fuck is happening here? In which case, you've got 2 minutes of material out. You've got presumably a reaction.
Wow, yeah.
You just randomly dial someone in the country and just go, hey, so, what's the deal with flying saucers? That's a great idea.
That's fucking great. Like, put them on speaker, so that's basically like, remote crowd work.
Yes.
Non-consensual.
They are not up for it. You've got a couple of minutes to convince them to hang on the line. And all you need is 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All you need is 5 minutes. Can I have 5 minutes of your time? I'm a stand-up comic. Here's the routine. So.
Please do not hang up. I'm not a telemarketer. This is way too late for telemarketing. And I'm a little bit drunk right now. I'm not working. Trust me.
And if they do hang up, it's essentially you've done a gong show. Like that's you being gonged off.
Gonged off, yeah. You mentioned earlier about like how you set up.
So if you want to start a comedy club, it's like any business. I mean, you might have these kind of big ideas and delusions about art and comedy and romanticism about getting on stage every night. But it's a numbers game. It's a business. So you've got to make sure that everything, like the business functions first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I guess that was one of the good things about Monkey Barrel is that it was set up by 5 or 6 different people and everyone was pretty strong on any given area that would make a success. You had people who were really good at the booking and the marketing. You had people who were good at the numbers and the accountancy. So having a decent team that take responsibility for one area which will keep your business afloat and allow you to live all your crazy dreams until a global disease shows up is very important. And I think that's one of the main things. And that's one of the good things about Monkey Barrel is a team effort. It's a real family life.
Yeah.
And there's that core people who set it up, and then there's also the strata of like other people who work at the bar, who work in the office, who take a responsibility.
What is it like over there in your situation? Like when you first started out, did you guys like start out as like a bar?
No, it was always going to be a comedy club.
Right.
Edinburgh's not that, so Edinburgh's a capital city. But it's not that big a city, to be honest. Like it's smaller than Glasgow. You know, places like Manchester, Liverpool, obviously London are obviously bigger. Yeah. But Edinburgh, I don't know if it's just a hangover from the festival making that the kind of capital of comedy, has meant that for quite a small city, there were at one point before Monkey Barrel opened 5 different comedy clubs running. There was the Stand, there was Jojo Sutherland, an act, used to have a club called the Shack on Rose Street. There was a Jongleurs and there was a Highlight. They were once one company and then split into 2, and they both had a thing in town. And then there was the original version of Monkey Barrel, the Beehive. And one by one, they all kind of fell apart because they were trying to do something, not the Stand, but the other places were trying to do weekend comedy. Yep. Where Monkey Barrel tried to focus on doing weekend, but also doing essentially what the Stand did, which was 7 nights a week. So you were cultivating a number of different type of comedy fans. If you like sketch comedy, then this was the place for you. Yeah. If you were a stag party and you wanted to see weekend stuff, that's fine. But if you loved improv, then there was a thing for you as well. And it's about essentially knowing what the audience of your city wants and trying to cater for, rather than you jamming something you want into the space that you think it should go. So it's just, like, again, it's the same as any business. It's about the market research that goes along. And because a lot of us were comics and some of us weren't, I think there was already a good deal of experience and market research done by this larger group. But yeah, like, again, you can market things all you want, but I think we put on good shows, and that's why anything survives, because it's got its own vibe.
Yeah, I think because I did the Monkey Barrel times, particularly the new act night, Top Banana. But yeah, I could definitely see, like there were different shows that every night. Obviously, you have Top Banana, new material, you have your new acts, you have your more alternative stuff, and sketches. People like the Edinburgh Review using the spaces to do their weekly shows. But yeah, so obviously you gotta have different types, accommodating the different genres of subgenres.
Yeah. It's make sure you've got the brains trust, make sure you've got the money or know how to get the money, and make sure that what you're putting out there is decent. There's a lot of people who will set up a comedy night and they will try to save money by putting on just basically it being an open mic, and that's never a good idea, because for everyone who is decent at comedy, there's maybe 5-6 people who are just. Now, sometimes the worst people who get up on stage at an open mic might, in actual fact, be the best thing that you see at that show, because, all of us, I'm sure, put time and effort into the process, into the architecture of writing comedy. But if we're honest, nothing that we will ever write down or work out in our heads is funnier than just a mental person getting up and screaming for 5 minutes because an open mic has allowed them to do that.
This is true. Statement.
And because it's only 5 minutes, you get the purest form of that craziness. And that's why it's so beautiful. I mean, how many times, have we been down to, remember there was a gig 4 p.m. at the International Bar in Dublin, and we'd sometimes go down and KO comedy. KO comedy, and sometimes the acts would be great, and then sometimes, wow, it just took your breath away. The craziness that went on there.
I mean, there was even a guy called Crazy Al. He didn't hold back.
I remember that guy, yeah. I think I said, why is he, because I saw the list and it said Crazy Al, and I was like, why is he called Crazy Al? I think somebody just went, watch. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, you thought that he was just being ironic, calling himself Crazy Al, like we'd be very tame, like sort of very dry humor, and then he goes up and he's talking about fucking Justin Bieber.
Yeah, he called himself Crazy Al, and then everyone else called him Crazy Al for a completely different set of circumstances, but the name was the same for the whole thing. That's why
the name stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meant so much to so many.
Yeah, and also another question is how do you book acts?
Well, again, because some of us were already comics, we knew pretty much everybody on the circuit, so you know where everybody is in the scheme of, industry standard. You also know who's free or who's not, so you just start reaching out to people. In terms of like booking newer acts, it's about just setting up an email address, advertising on an industry notice board, and then, doing due diligence of trying to find a clip or asking them for a clip of them performing.
Yeah.
Or, trusted vouchers from more established acts. It's just a constant, like, you have to go out and ask questions and see other. Because not everybody, like, this is something always very tough for a lot of comics to understand, is that some people are just not suited for some clubs. Like, there's just a vibe that you might not gel with in some clubs. And it's not because they're bad, or it's just, sometimes it just doesn't work in certain places. So you do have to, like, there is a kind of very nuanced science.
I feel like that's true, hey. Because, like, I feel like if you were, like, big enough for people to buy tickets to see you, they want to see you. But then if you're actually trying to find comics for the people who come to see it, then you actually have to fit the equation somehow.
Yeah. And there are certainly some people, I think, with the Fringe being the kind of the dominant place on the calendar in a year for comedians, is there are some people who will do the best hours show. They'll take an hour of your time and it'll blow you away. But if you saw them on a weekend bill, 10 minutes might be too much. It might be a painful experience. So sometimes, like, just club comp is for some people, whilst, a lot of other people can go off and be a show comic, a fringe performer. And I think it's very important that you try and understand where you are, or also what you want. Do you want to be a gigging comic? Do you want to be creating full theatrical hour and a half long presentations?
Yeah. So I think, even like, asking for gigs, it does feel like, essentially asking for a job. You obviously, especially in terms of communicating with the booker.
Yeah.
Because I heard stories about, like, people really new acts, like looking for gigs at like one of the more established nights or clubs. And sometimes they just like pretending to try to be funny when they communicate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about a booker is that they are somebody who might have to say no, but do not want to say no. Like, they're just somebody who doesn't want to fuck up somebody else's life or hopes or dreams. And they therefore disconnect themselves quite a lot from the conversation, which means that when acts are approaching them, either email or phone, I think acts sense that, so they overcompensate and just make it quite an awkward experience, know. It's nobody's fault other than it's just two people who want broadly to be positive, but just out of human etiquette, for some reason can't be,
Yeah. And then, just the clip is just the best indication. A good clip is the best indication of who you are as an act, rather than you trying to be funny in the moment.
Yeah. A clip is always the best thing to go with, because it's very difficult to fake a clip. Although I did see one guy who had obviously filmed himself and then filmed like, and this is all on his phone, filmed like, like in shows that like cut away to the audience, see the audience laughing. And he'd obviously like gotten off stage, cut away and filmed someone else's audience laughing. And then he put all of that a laugh track, but every laugh sounded exactly the same. Like I had one sound clip of laugh and he just repeated that all the way through his clip. So it actually seems more like a fucking nightmare from like a Stephen King film or something.
Actually, every sitcom ever. Pretty much.
Like any sketch show which does a sitcom piss take, that's what it was like,
Yeah. And also obviously, setting up the club, booking the acts, and you're gonna have your show on the night as well. And so, what goes on at night? Just besides your comics going up and then do their thing.
I mean that's when the people who work at the bar or the techs really come into their own. They look after the room, so they are the ambassadors. They welcome people in, they seat people, they take the ticket money. They're the general fun representative. And it's nighttime, and there's alcohol, and there's people coming in looking to have a good time. So a lot of the time, the staff also feel that kind of party atmosphere. I don't mean anything improper, like they're drinking on the job. I mean, they have the vibe of joining in the party, leading the party, and, you know, like, it's them, it's their world, and the acts just focus on getting on and off stage and working out where they are on the bill and what's required for them. And then there's that science that goes on, which is the show has begun, the compere is on stage, they're doing the heavy lifting, working out who's in the room, what the vibe is, where people are from. If you have material, you tailor it to these people. If anyone's a problem, you know, look out for. So there's a lot of watching the audience and working out, like, what is it? Like, what is the conversation that you're going to have with this audience? And it keeps you, I mean, that's with lockdown, that's genuinely one of the things that I've missed. It's not necessarily the validation that happens on stage, because let's be honest, like, there's an ego aspect to why we miss it, right? There's a reason why we're pining for this.
Yeah.
But it's more about before you even deliver the material, the mental agility that you need in order to suss out how to play the gig. And I think there's a lot of people whose brains are turning to mush because they can't yell at some stags on a Saturday night. It's so tragic when you think about it. My mental health, like the very growth and support of my mind, is dependent on whether, like, a fucking bunch of 28 stags from Norfolk are kicking off on a Saturday night. I just accessed a part of myself which I haven't felt all pandemic, and I've just went, it's fuck. This is all fuck.
Yeah, and obviously, and you have to handle health and safety is quite important. So,
I just bared my soul, man, and you're moving on to chat about health and safety.
Mental health.
Mental health. Important, guys.
Mental health. The sanitizer. Just sanitize your brain. Goddamn.
That is funny. Fun.
Yeah. But it's actually obviously, on the night you're gonna have a few people who are a bit too overly enthusiastic. Who think they're part of the show and start saying stuff. Obviously not malicious, but obviously the situation can deteriorate. And sometimes the host cannot do anything about it. Like, who would step in?
Oh, well, we've got a bouncer. I mean, so there's the bar manager the floor walker who runs, which is usually Chris Griffin. But we've got a bouncer for Friday and Saturday night shows. We have and sometimes if it's like a bank holiday Sunday vibe, we have a bouncer, and it's their job to collar and fling out. And it's never really needed. I think a lot of people can be reasoned with. I've never encountered somebody so drunk they can't be reasoned. Yeah. But we would have, if someone does, most of the time, it's not about heckling that people are thrown out or being drunk. It's, people who've decided to take drugs in the toilet. We never, obviously that's never encouraged. Obviously it's a complete no-no, but every now and again, you'll get somebody who's just off their fucking head on coke or something. Because bizarrely, drugs you can't reason with, it seems.
Yeah.
And we had one time where I'm sure there was a guy in the front row where there are some tables, and he was obviously coked out of his head. I don't think he understood where he was. So he got the coke out and started lining it up on the table in front of Rick, the host. And Rick was just like, "What are you doing?" And the guy just looked at him and went, "Sorry, do you want some?" And then that's not what this is. It's not about politeness. It's pack it up and fuck off, man. But we've got a bouncer. We've got trained, licensed officials.
Yeah. So you gotta be prepared for any situation.
Absolutely.
Anything can go down on the night. And obviously, because the Monkey Barrel and all other venues like the Stand and many other comedy clubs around the world, they're closed now. And so what is the effects of closure on a club?
Well, it means that a lot of people's income, job, satisfaction, and I guess their very identity. I think it's taken to now for people to realize how much your job, what you do, that motivates you, also is wrapped up in your own feeling of self-worth, self-esteem.
Yeah.
And that. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of good people. There's a lot of attention focused on the comics that are out of work, but there is so many other people, the bar staff, the office staff, techs, all that kind of stuff. They're out of work as well. And that's the human thing behind a comedy club. It's not just, oh, poor comics, they're not able to get back on stage because their ego. There's loads of people who weren't doing that. That's not what their thing was. And they are also unable to work. And there's no, at the moment where we are now, I don't know when you'll release this, but there's no end in sight. There's this idea of the magical vaccine coming along in springtime, and nobody fucking knows that. And also, we're not going to suddenly all get it within a week and everything's fine.
Definitely, yeah.
It's going to take ages. And so there are so many people who have that level of experience, but also cannot get another job because everything like the thing that they are skilled in is also closed. And there's a lot of worry. There is a real, ironically, it's a comedy club, but there's a lot of sadness and worry that goes along with it at the moment. And I feel, and every one of those people is a friend. And so I feel for them. And there's nothing can really be done.
Anyway, but yes, but as a sort of glimmer of hope, so we'll move on to a final question. Obviously, we've learned that how comedy clubs form, operate. So this is a question for like the panel, and you can chip in then. So when will we ever see a sort of like a modern comedy club, stand-up comedy club in Vietnam?
I think if we ever see that, it's gonna have to start as a Vietnamese comedy club first. And then maybe the English-speaking division will come in later as something that attach itself to it. It cannot just exist by itself, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're talking about that, like if it's run by local, that's what I mean. And because nowadays there already been like English-speaking comedy club run by expat. But the problem with that is the expat come and go, so lifespan of the club normally would only last like 1 or 2 years max. So that's why the scene here usually get built up to a point, and then it got it had to go down again as the one who run major club leave the country. So so far that's based on my observation.
Yeah, obviously, there's a strong case for sort of like a bilingual club. It's just you're gonna have Vietnamese, which is more obviously going to be more sustainable, and then English.
Quite difficult because I feel like majority of Vietnamese, even when they speak English, not all of them have the same type of sense of humor.
I feel like I think I agree with you guys on this one, because the amount of Vietnamese people like who actually know about comedy and who is actually doing comedy. We are mostly people who have, experienced, the Western world. Or if you're local, you actually have experienced, expats and also the Western world from the expats people. Like they brought it over. Stuff like that. And the Western world, so, to be fair, you have lots of other, cultures of maybe slangs or whatever. And the content's going to be different. The culture's going to be different. My swear words, if I'm going to go back to Vietnam to perform, if I'm going to throw the cunt words everywhere, people are going to be just fucking repulsed as shit. Things like that. And I feel like even to have a club of like Vietnamese comics running, content materials in Vietnamese, it's also very hard because the population is still very young and they're not very open-minded to like satire, to being roasted on stage, being roasted on front seat, things like that. But I feel like give it maybe like 5 years after the pandemic for sure. So maybe we will open it. I don't know.
Yeah, why not? Because obviously there's a lot of potential, because with Vietnam, like you say, it's a very young population, but at the same time, it's a young population. Many of them have expendable income. They're willing to maybe spend on a night out, maybe watching try out some news. And they're going to be they're going to spend that money on things like stand-up comedy.
Hey,
I'm going to know, but but yeah, also like you said, it's quite difficult to sustain something like that. Like even in like what like Ben said, like in Edinburgh, there used to be 5 clubs. Now there are 2, and also 2 are all closed. But yeah, I think a lot of it really like what Ben said depends on market research and finding out what people want and maybe trying to adapt to that.
Yeah, there's something to be said about also modesty. Well, start small.
Yeah.
And stay small until you absolutely understand you can get big. The jonglers and the highlight that I mentioned, they were huge. They were huge 200-300 seaters. And they were never getting that many people in every Friday and Saturday. Monkey Barrel is 100 seats. That's plenty. Like that's plenty.
Yeah.
And when you can consistently fill that, then move it up by 25 each time.
Yeah.
And, so just be realistic with every step that you take. And don't immediately go after the money because I think we all understand there's zero money in what we do.
Sustainability is not a thing. We're not vegans.
Yeah.
I think like the element of culture and relatability to the ever changing population is very important to actually have like a local club, because to make people laugh in such a war-ridden country with a bunch of expats is not easy. To satisfy everyone is not easy. Just build the culture, I guess. Build the culture, keep it going. To the point where, you go out with your friends and you're like, okay, let's go to this club. And you mention the name and people are like, okay, let's go. To that point, then I feel like we would be able to sustain a community of comedians. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like what Ben said, just start small. And I think there's something magical just walking into a room, like maybe having like 30 people, they're all jam packed together. But then they're generating sounds. Oh,
what kind of sound?
Laughter. So, it's just like small room, 30 people, but then they're generating big laugh. And I think that's better than like any other big opera house.
Yeah. Acoustics, guys, acoustic.
Slam poetry.
Poetry night.
But that's I think that's all we have for this episode. Thank you so much to our panel and also and especially to our special guest Ben Verth. Sure.
Thank you for having me.
Love your beard. Shit.
Giving us all the big tips on giving us all the necessary tips on how to operate a comedy club. Hopefully, hopefully this will blow over and then we'll be back gigging. And thank you so much for tuning in. Right, yeah, thank you so much, guys.
That's it.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't hesitate to follow our social media for updates and our cool stuff. See you next time.